All right, before I start, I need everybody to stand up. All right, you have about 20 seconds. With a smile, I need you to greet a couple people around you. And during that 20 seconds, I need one volunteer to come up on the stage with me. You about... Ian, is that you? Yeah.
Hello.
Awesome.
My name is Reese.
My name is Riley. How are you? My name is not Riley.
All right, awesome. About 20 seconds. So, Ian is going to get a crash course real fast on how to shuck corn. We have a couple corn husks here, and what we're going to do, so pay attention real fast, I like to hold this in my left hand, and then with my dominant hand, grab a couple rows in, and then just twist. And as you twist, the kernels, if you keep it down, the kernels fall pretty much in the bucket, right? So, keep going the whole way. The whole way, get them most in there. It's okay if a couple fall. And then the husks go on the plate.
Okay.
So I have 3 of them. Go for it.
Okay. Am I timed or anything?
No, you're good. You're good. Just figure out the technique. Go for it. Awesome. Is that working for you pretty well? That technique, that works? Okay, good, awesome. The husk go right there. 2 more. You're doing great. Nice. Awesome. Now you're good. Okay. Awesome. It's just a little crash course. Doing great over 10 seconds of how to do this. Very nice. And one more. Stuff. If you get started on the edges. Very nice. You're doing great. You're almost there. No time left. You're good. You're good. Good. Kind of get the hang of it after 3, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Cool. So, Ian, you are really great at shucking corn. But here's what I need now. I have some glue, even a new bottle, but I need those kernels back on the husks.
Is this one timed?
No, clean up your mess.
Put
Well,
all of them on here.
yeah, like get them back like how they were before. While you're doing that, I'll clean up all the mess you made.
Don't do one at a time.
It's gonna be a long presentation.
I'm gonna take a little while. They're falling off. Okay, about 30 more seconds. You're not timed though, it's okay. Have about 10 seconds.
It's so hard
Okay.
to think.
All right,
So,
good. We're good here, Ian. All right, awesome.
yeah, like 5.
4. Let me go back real fast. You were really good at shucking the corn though. Just putting it back on. But would it be easier maybe if we had a different type of glue, maybe if we had different resources, we had maybe some research on how to better stick the kernels in? Would that have worked better? Yeah, probably. But again, you were very good at shucking the corn. So give Ian a hand. Thank you very much. Awesome. So what Ian just demonstrated are the 2 transitions in our United States military. He demonstrated one, when our men and women go from a civilian to a soldier, and then he also demonstrated when our men and women go from a soldier back to a civilian. And what you saw is that Ian got training on how to shuck the corn, and in fact, he was very good at it. And this is the transition of going from a civilian to a soldier. But then when you have to reverse the process, he got a bottle of Elmer's glue and nothing more. He was given very limited resources and very inadequate resources to transition back to a civilian or back to that full ear of corn. So let me take a step back and explain my experience of how I got into this topic of the United States military. So all I saw was that these soldiers were very good at checking the core, and they were very good at what they did. I've sent over 300 care packages to soldiers over 5 years, and all of the email responses I received from them were thank yous. They were lively, they were happy, they were patriotic, they loved what they did. I began to see these men and women as respectful, as strong, as warriors, almost indestructible. And then I started reaching out to the veteran population. And there were some veterans at a VA hospital in Texas that had PTSD. And they were asking for paint-by-number kits. And so I sent a bunch of paint-by-number kits down to Texas, and the responses I received were a little bit different than these thanks from Afghanistan. These men and women explained that the reason they want paint-by-numbers is because it gives them something, quote, to dream about, other than their very own portrait of hell that they have seen through their time in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and in the Middle East. And you begin to see that there's a very big difference, that these men and women go from thanks to needing help. Excuse me, but let's look at a little deeper into going from a soldier back to a civilian. What do they get? What is their glue? They get health care, they get the GI Bill, they get economic aid, and this seems great until we look and we realize that our veterans are overrepresented in homeless populations, in substance abusing populations, and in imprisoned populations. In fact, New Scientist believes that up to 20%, about 1/5 of our men and women who have served for Operation Enduring Freedom and Operation Iraqi Freedom suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. More than that, up to 20 veterans with PTSD commit suicide every single day. And with these statistics, we're forced to ask, are these veterans getting as much as they should, or at minimum, is the system working as it should? Let's look a little bit deeper into the problems that our veterans face as they go from a soldier back to a civilian. Within their family and their social life, they can have difficulty to adjusting to the lack of camaraderie in the civilian world versus where they have been in the military. Within their families changed from their couple-month deployment, and when they come back, they have difficulty reintegrating just into their family alone. And furthermore, if there's another upcoming deployment, that can really take a toll on families. But this is the least of their worries. A bigger problem that these men and women face is the trauma, and there's both physical and mental trauma. Physically, that's the good news. Physically, our medical technology has improved so that more veterans are surviving. In fact, from 2001 to 2012, upwards of 200 soldiers who have had a major limb amputation have been able to stay active duty in both combat and combat support roles. This is absolutely incredible. But what's less incredible is the mental trauma. And let's go back to that 1/5 statistic, that 1/5 of men and women, 20% of men and women who have served for Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom suffer from PTSD. This statistic becomes less of a shock when we realize that over 85% of Army veterans who served in Iraq have seen dead bodies, have been shot at, have been attacked and or ambushed, have received rocket or mortar fire, and or have known someone killed or seriously injured. In fact, this statistic that 85% of these men and women have seen this and only 20% suffer from PTSD is somewhat of a miracle. But it also sheds light on the fact that the rest of the men and women who have not been diagnosed with PTSD still have demons in their head that they're fighting. But with these 20% and even more that are having struggles, a lot of these soldiers don't receive medical attention, or at minimum, not adequate medical attention. One of the reasons of this is the social stigma of a man, a soldier, a warrior, receiving help for a mental condition. And eliminating the stigma is an extremely subjective goal. But a good start would be to educate our soldiers on, on the risks they face with traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder, to educate the families on how to better reintegrate their loved one as they come home from a deployment, and to educate the general population on what these men and women have seen and gone through and what help they need supporting them. Another huge reason that men and women don't receive help for their mental illness is because they don't trust the VA system, and especially they don't trust the treatment that they would receive. And this not trusting the VA system isn't that much of a shock when we know that it takes on average 9 months to complete a claim in the VA system. And in some larger cities, it takes up to 600 days. And this becomes no shock when we think about the 2013 Phoenix VA scandal, where over 40 veterans died waiting for their appointments. The other side to this is the effectiveness of treatment. And there are 3 layers of treatment. The first layer is where the majority of our doctors are right now, and that's targeting the symptoms. It is not uncommon for a veteran to be taking upwards of 20, 30, or even 40 pills every single day to mask the symptoms that they are having. But this is just like having a tree, cutting the branches off, and asking, why isn't the tree dead? It treats the symptoms, it doesn't get to the root of the problem. The second layer of treatment is targeting the short term. This looks like therapy dogs and wilderness retreats. It has no long-term effect, but it does relieve stress in the short term. The third level, however, is not where doctors are yet, but it's where they are headed. This is targeting the roots of the issue. There are new methods like cognitive processing therapy and habituation that not only help the soldiers work through what they have seen and what they've done, but also to be able to forgive themselves, to be able to train themselves on how to become a civilian again, and how to just work through and make sure that as they have these memories, they don't have the raw emotions once attached to them. In fact, what's even more incredible than this is that there's new studies that are showing there are ways not just to treat post-traumatic stress disorder, but even to prevent it. And there are 3 specific studies that have researched this. One, they have found that soldiers who have played with video games to create hyper-awareness have lower chances of having PTSD after a trauma. Second, there's a protein in your blood, PACAP, which regulates your body's response to stress. And if you measure the amount of PACAP you have in your blood, that is directly proportional to your vulnerability to have PTSD symptoms. So if our military could measure each soldier for their level of this protein in their blood, they could then specifically target these men and women who are at higher risk for PTSD with more preventative treatment. And then the third, and my personal favorite of these new studies, is that if you track men and women who have PTSD, if you track their symptoms overlaid with their hormonal cycle, you will see that when men are highest in testosterone and women are highest in estrogen, they have the lowest symptoms of PTSD. And this leads scientists to believe that after a trauma, if we administer estrogen to women and testosterone to men, it will decrease their long-term vulnerability to post-traumatic stress disorder. This is incredible. But if we take a step back, we can see, as Ian demonstrated, that the glue is lacking. The resources that we give our men and women is not enough. They aren't that indestructible. They're not receiving help because of the social stigma. We have soldiers not receiving help because they don't trust the VA. And we have soldiers not receiving help because they don't trust the effectiveness of treatment. And until this changes, it will remain that our veterans are overrepresented in prisons, in substance abusing populations, and in homelessness. It will remain that our soldiers suffer from anxiety, from nightmares, and from hallucinations. And it will remain that our soldiers are given little more than pills to mask the symptoms. With this in mind, I received an email from a soldier who I had sent a care package to. He wrote, "The amount of support we have been shown surely makes this job worth it." And with everything in mind, I snickered. I wondered, will he think the same when he gets home? But if we take another step back, we realize that it's so easy to become caught up in the bad, and that there truly is hope. Our failing VA system could be fixed by privatizing some of the hospitals and giving our soldiers an option to go to private hospitals for their treatment. We have new methods such as cognitive processing therapy and habituation that can not only mask the symptoms of PTSD, but actually get to the root of the problem. We have even studies that show that there's a way to prevent PTSD. We have prosthetics that are enabling our men and women to continue serving in the military after they have had a major limb amputation. There are professors and students at Cornell University who are even working on a brain patch to solve traumatic brain injury. And for each of us, whenever we see a soldier, whenever we see a veteran, we can thank them. We can greet them warmly like we did at the beginning of this presentation. And we can recognize that every single person, every soldier, every veteran, and every single person sitting in the audience right now is fighting a hard battle. You just haven't seen that their battle has changed from bullets and mortars to flashbacks and nightmares. But boosting their confidence, giving them things, and being kind to them can boost their confidence enough to go and seek medical attention. And with this in mind, I received another email from a paratrooper in Afghanistan who wrote, "Just want to say thanks for your support. It means a lot to us to know we have people like you back home." And that time, I smiled, because that's the way it should be. Thank you.